Hi guys, it's Gabriela. I thought it'd be fun if I showed you guys my AP art portfolio. This past year I took AP art, 2D art and design. This video is gonna be split into like a couple different parts. So like first I'm gonna talk about like what even is AP art, like how it works, because it's very different from other AP classes. And then I'll go on to talk about like my written evidence and then selected works and kind of the images that I use to show like the process of how I got to like my final pieces. And then of course I'll like tell you guys like some tips so that you can also get a 5. Yeah, so in AP art, you're not really taking a test at the end of the year like how you might in some of your other classes, but rather you're kind of like working towards a final portfolio throughout the entire year. And that final portfolio will consist of 15 images overall of like your actual art pieces, and also like your thought process, and also kind of like if you made any revisions to any pieces, like how you improved on your pieces and how you got to like the end product. And then you also have like your selected works, which are your like 5 like best, like I'm most proud of these kind of artworks. First, I'm gonna tell you guys about my sustained investigation. I kind of centered it around the question, how could I use animalistic imagery to portray my struggle with what it means to be human? And then I'm gonna read you guys my response. My sustained investigation started with the question, how could I use animalistic imagery to portray my struggle with what it means to be human? As I developed my pieces, I thought about what it means to be a human, whether it was a physical sense of owning and taking care of a body, or a more emotional sense of the connections we make with one another. I continue to stretch my thinking to ways I have struggled with maintaining a human status through my experience as a teenage girl. With the addition of animals as a subject, I call it the innermost instincts which result from the struggle. Let's get started on looking at what I actually made. So my first piece was this one. She's a 16 by 20 canvas, black canvas, because I was at Michael's and I saw a pack of black canvases. I was like, wow, that's really cool. And so I bought them and painted on them. I'm gonna stop carrying this now or else my arms will start hurting. So the title of the piece is Hopeful Neglect. And this was one of the pieces where I was kind of exploring like my relationship with other people. And my idea behind it was the hope zone will return blinding one from the damage they have caused. The reason that it has like this like fancy framing stuff is I'm actually pretty proud of this work because it was also showcased in a gallery. There's like a gallery in my city that like a lot of, it's like a young artist like exhibition, and it was like showcased there. Like it's like for my school to go there. So I'm pretty proud of that. And it also won Best in Show when we had our like art gallery at the end of the year in like April. So pretty proud of that piece. We love it. Okay, here's tip number 1. So like when you're doing your college board and you're doing like your portfolio, it will ask you like specifically like what processes did you use when you were creating this body of work. And that's where you're gonna wanna use like a lot of your like very like art nerd terms, like juxtapose and like showing time, and like you want to talk about composition and color and line and movement and like all those like principles and like elements of design and whatever. But that's like one of like my biggest tips. I think that really helped me get a high score. I'll literally like put a list of like everything that you should be doing. Okay, so the second piece I'm gonna show you is not physical because it's one of the pieces I submitted to show my process. So it's gonna be here. I just called it like a digital collage. I did it in Procreate. I tried to find like a very beginning and like kind of like a middle point of how I changed the work to be better. And then like I would just like kind of like explain like some of my like initial ideas. In the middle, you'll see some sketches that I did at the very beginning when I was trying to like think up of like what I wanted to do. So I include like three of those like sketches, like some very rudimentary, some like more detailed. And then I'm like pointing to it and I was like, oh, like I was thinking about triangular composition. So that would be like the first thing, like my first step. And then like my second step would be like my reference photos. So when you're like painting or whatever medium that you choose, like what inspired you? Like did you see something and you were like, oh, I want to paint that? Or did you like have to go off and like do like make your own reference photos like I did. Like I would just like compile all that together. Like you can use like Photoshop or like Procreate like I did, compile that all together and then use that as like your process image. So this is my second piece. It's a cute little acrylic. It's actually a gesso board, cute little acrylic on gesso board, and it's a still life. So I kind of like set up in the back of our studio and just like made my own little still life, and I was just like there in the corner painting away. With this work, I was kind of thinking about like my relationship with my body in terms of who I am like culturally, and kind of talking about how like I often feel like objectified because of like my Latina background and all of that. So I have like a camera like pointing at like towards the fruit, which like symbolizes like fertility and all of that, and how like I feel like often society like only values me like for kind of that like stereotype that you see a lot. And then I also have like a globe to like represent from like the other parts of the world that I'm from. And yeah, for when I write about my processes, like as I mentioned earlier, how you want to use like those kind of buzzwords, I said about this piece, selected objects to assist in portraying meaning, so that they know that I was like painting from observation. And then I said played with hierarchy in terms of place and size. Hierarchy is like another word, like size is like another word. What's interesting about this piece actually is that the only reason that like I wanted to paint it was because this was like in fall, where I was like doing a lot of college applications, and I was like trying to put stuff together, and I was like, dang, like I don't have a still life. Like a lot of colleges were like asking for like that kind of like observational study. So I guess that's tip number 2. Use your works as like an opportunity for like other areas of your life of which you might need art. For example, like college, like if you need more like observational pieces like for your college portfolios that you're submitting, or like I did like early decisions, so like I like was really rushing to like get those pieces done. If you don't think that you're gonna apply until like I don't know, like second semester, like March or something, like you're fine. But if you're like really rushing, then like I would use your AP art class as like an opportunity to get those like other pieces in. Anyways, so over here is like my little collage that I did for this piece to show like my beginning, like my middle, my end. So you see like I did like the same thing, like I did like a rough little sketch, and then this one was like a little harder because like I was literally just like looking at something and painting it, so there's like not much that I could change, but I just did like my very like fundamental like blocking in the shapes and all of that. Okay, so here is my next piece. As you can see, she is a little bit unconventional. One of the things that I was exploring also, like you'll see more when I show you my other pieces, I was kind of exploring the kinds of canvases that I could use. So like while all my pieces are in acrylic, I chose to kind of play with and like challenge myself with like what types of surfaces I could paint on. So this is just like a circular like wooden board. In the background, I also did photo transfer. So if you're one of those people that like feels like very stuck in like one medium, like I would encourage you to kind of find ways of like how you can use that medium differently. It's also helpful doing photo transfer because then you don't need to paint a background. So maybe think about that when you start your next piece. So the title of this one, oh my god, I didn't say the title of the last one. The title of the last one was Exotic Capture. Now you know. The title of this one is Dead Awake. I was really motivated by kind of like investigating the relationship of like me just like not sleeping in terms of kind of to chase that like academic like validation, and how like I would kind of neglect like the health of like my sleep schedule and all of that stuff like in order to like receive those high marks, and like the unhealthiness and like toxicity of having that sort of like mindset. What you see in the background is like all like my notes, and then I actually have like a math test on there, stuff like that. I think the math test I have on there is the one I got 51 on. So, you know, even if you do study, sometimes it's just not on the cards. And that's why I'm filming an AP art video and not an like AP calc video. Okay, next. This is the process of how I got there. So you can, so for this one, the thumbnail is like really different. Like the one I have right now is like very much inspired by like dissection, but like in my initial idea was like more so like I was gonna do like the little like knives and stuff, and I ended up like not doing that. On the photo on like on the bottom, like I only have like 4 hands there. So like another thing I talked about like how I revised and like made my piece better is like I added like 2 extra hands to kind of like help with the composition. Next. So this is my next circular piece. I only have 2. This one is called Tainted Meal, and it's just arroz con habichuelas inside a pot with a cute little cat, and then like a little like dishcloth with like straight rice. As for what I was thinking with this piece, this is again like the still life I showed earlier. I was thinking about my identity of like being Latina and like what that means. I feel like we are so very much like more objectified and like valued for very like vain reasons rather than for the culture and like the love that we can bring to a society or like to a table, like over here at the dish. I'm half Puerto Rican and like half Nicaraguan, by the way, so that's where the arroz came from. And then the cat is like kind of on top to like symbolize like how that is like how that takes like more priority. As for like how this piece changed over time, another little digital collage. You can see like my first idea was it didn't have like that good of a composition. Like, I just had like the cat like straight in the middle, which you want to avoid. So I brainstormed with my teacher and we like talked about like different ways I could like have like the food set up and like the cat set up, and like also like following like the curve of the canvas and like really using the canvas to my advantage in this piece to make it like visually more interesting. And you can also see that I added like the dishcloth and like the little straight pieces of rice at the end because I felt like I needed something in that negative space in order to activate it. Yeah. This next one is actually 2 canvases. I did a little diptych. So it's me on that side and then my dog, his name is Chicky. And obviously me before I got bangs and like dyed my hair different colors. And oh yeah, I dyed my hair by the way. You guys probably noticed that earlier. I did do that. I actually did 2 self-portraits, and you see my other one late. No, I think I did 3. The first one I showed you was also a self-portrait, but I think you guys also got that because of the reference photos. Anyways, so this is called Disparate Desire. And like the idea behind this piece was a yearning for a connection and how I project that onto my dog. So like, as you can see, I'm like holding a little dog collar, and then on like Chiki's table, there's like a little tennis ball. I have what he needs in order to fulfill him, which is like to like go outside and like be social, like which is why I put like the ball there. But because we're like separated, that like that connection is never gonna be like 100% fulfilled. And then he has in his mouth like a little like Coca-Cola can, and then like on my table I have like an empty glass. But it's kind of about like how I struggled to fit in socially sometimes, and I experienced that like a lot in high school. And then like how I kind of like project that into my dog, because like my dog, like he loves humans, like he loves humans. Like he would go to a dog party and then like look for the only human, you know? And the way that like I would maybe go to a party and then like look for the dog, you know? Okay, here's a third tip. So tip number 3, make sure to like always look at all of your pieces together as like a full body. Like for me, when I did like my first like circular piece, I knew that I needed to do like a second one in order for that first canvas to not look like so like out of place. And so like that's why I did like 2 circle ones. And then I also like tied that into like my Jessa board because they were both like a wooden material. And then I also did like several black canvases, so because if I just did one, then it would also look out of place. Focus on making your pieces stand out individually, but also when like people look at them, they can understand that they're meant to be together. So here is the process I did for that. We're now on image 10. We're almost done, 5 more to go. I don't think there's like much to say here. It's kind of like the same thing that I've been saying for all my other processes. I have like an initial like sketch, and I kind of show how that changed. And then like here you can see how like I added the trees like later like in the background to kind of also show that contrast of like not really fitting in, because like what is a couch doing outside with trees? Like that doesn't make sense. Anyways, I also have some reference photos there. Not much else to say. I think we can move on to the next piece. Okay guys, are you ready? This piece is definitely the biggest one I've ever done. It's 24 inches by 36. This is actually the last kind of finished piece I have in my portfolio, and like for my selected works, all the ones after this are also just like showing my process. Honestly, I can't even like hold this up and show you guys because it's so big that like it's insane. I definitely cried over this piece, but I'm also very proud of this piece. This was the last one that I finished. I ended up finishing it mid-April because our like art exhibition was at the end of April, so it needed to be done by then. I was just like, oh my god, so many sleepless nights over that painting. But I love it, and that's why I do it, you know. The title of it is Starving Instinct, and it's centered on the idea of giving up parts of yourself to fulfill a higher desire to be successful. The elements I was focusing with this one were like bigger ground relationships. So as you can see, like I'm in a kitchen and I'm holding bread. Wow, like that. I'm in a really good job of making that make sense instead of just putting myself in a white background. Don't do that. Don't do that. Process, very important, very important. Easy way to like get to like your 15 images that are required by College Board. Do like show your process for like all the works that you're doing. Actually, what you see there, like the middle image, I like took my reference photo, and then my school had like a projector, so I like projected my reference photo onto my canvas, which was very helpful. Tip number 4, know your resources, know your tools, because painting this much, you know, like especially when you have all your other classes like on top, painting this much is very difficult. So if you have resources, use them. So yes, I did use a projector to project my reference photo, and then I kind of just like blocked in the main idea, and then like obviously I like painted the rest of it. I hope you know that by now. So the next 3 images that I'm gonna show you also deal with like the process of like like in the very beginning, how I got to my sustained investigation, like my question and like the whole theme that I focused on for the year, and B, how I tied it all together at the end. This is my next piece. It's just called a mind map. It's an exercise that my art teacher made like all her students do. We wrote our question like in the middle of the page, and then like stemming off of that, we kind of wrote like words like we associate like with our question. So like on mine, I kind of split into 2. I split into like animalistic and humanity. So on animalistic, I was like, I would go to like zoo and like canine, like locked up, like cannibal, like prey, predator, and just like any topic that like jumped into my head. And then like on the humanity side, I talked about like desire and emotion and like loyalty, empty, obsession, starving, literally any word that like popped into my head. Honestly, if you're like going to do like AP art next year and you're like sitting like at home like trying to figure out like what you want to focus on for an entire year, because it is hard to like pick a theme that you don't even know that you're going to be interested in like 2 months later, I would do one of these mind maps so many times like throughout the year. Like I would go back, I would look at it, I will like look for a word, I'm like, that's a word that I can like make an idea out of. Like, and also, okay, tip number, I don't know what tip number I'm on, but useful tip, it's okay to like change your topic, to change your theme. In fact, they want to see, like they as in College Board want to see that evolution. Don't restrict yourself to what you thought you might have liked back in like August or September or like whenever you're starting. Image number 14. This is just the exhibition that I was talking about earlier that we had in like the late April, I think it was. And kind of just like showcases like all my pieces together and talks about like this is where I was at the end. And it's also helpful because it shows College Board how your pieces can be cohesive while also standing out individually, which ties back to like what I told you guys earlier. Yay! Image number 15. We're almost done. This, honestly, I was just struggling to find something to put in image number 15 because I did not have another piece of work. So what I ended up doing is another exercise we did at the beginning of the year is look for artist inspiration, which is another thing that you guys should do too. Put down like a list of like artists you like and be like, oh, like I like the compositions that this artist uses, like I like the color palettes that this artist uses. So these were the artists that like I looked at. So I have Julia Miedzinska, she's like a Polish artist. I also have Cindy Sherman, who's a photographer actually. So your artist of inspiration doesn't need to do just like purely like 2D or like 3D art, like they could also be a photographer. And then Edward Hopper. Yep. Another thing, if you're like at the end of the year and you're like struggling to like find that like the image number 14, image number 15, like literally just like go on your phone and like scroll through your photo gallery, like you'll find something. I think that's all I have to say to you guys. Thank you for sticking around to the end, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Bye.